Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us again. Sophia Lucia Perola here with Garden State Film Festival. It is the 23rd annual Garden State Film Festival this year from March 27th through March 30th. You can check out awesome films. We got like 200 this year. The lineup is up at gsff.org. You can get any tickets on there. And I have the pleasure of doing the filmmaker interviews, one of my favorite part. And today I am talking to the director and producer of the short documentary Sludge, Jeff Christian, director, producer. Congratulations on your acceptance on making this film. And thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Thank you, Sophia. It is quite an honor to be a part of the festival this year.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm super. We got to talk a little bit before we even started this, guys. And I'm really excited to talk to you about all of this and this film. Talk to me. What is Sludge about? Tell us, who comes to Garden State Film Festival,
Yep.
what will they be watching?
So Sludge is a film about, broadly speaking, it's a film about something called forever chemicals, or PFAS, PFAS. And I think in the news the last year or so, we've been hearing more and more about this particular type of chemical, which sadly is in our blood, it's in the soil, it's in the water, it's in clothes that we wear, Teflon pans, also in certain carpets. But the story that we followed is about a group of farmers in the state of Maine who discovered they had this chemical PFAS in their soil and in their farm after fertilizer was distributed decades ago on their farm, and they were told that this fertilizer by the state, by officials, that it was safe to spread. Once they spread the fertilizer on their farm that was contaminated with PFAS, it went into all of their soil, their land, their cattle. One farmer that we spoke with had dozens of cattle, and sadly, they had to get rid of half, or if not more, of their herd. So it's really an exploration into, tragically, farmers and local small farmers that were very heavily affected by what we know to be as sludge.
Oh my gosh. I'm glad I wasn't on while you were talking because my face was just like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's tragic, crazy story. How did this story get brought to you? I didn't even know. I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
surprised to hear there's chemicals in our clothes, in our food, in everything. Unfortunately, a lot of farmers are affected by so many things. But how did you hear about PFAS? How did this story come to you?
So the man who edited our film, his name's Mike Pagano, a tremendous editor. I was on the phone with him on a project, and I'm driving down the freeway. I live in Los Angeles. He lives in the state of Maine, and I said, "Mike, how you doing?" And he said, "Well, I'm not doing so good. I just found out from our neighbors that we need to test our soil. We need to test our potentially our blood, our bodies for this chemical I've never even heard of called PFAS." And he said, apparently, what happened was there was all of this fertilizer and this sort of the substance that was spread throughout the state. And what we looked into was over 700 different sites throughout just the state of Maine had potentially this chemical compound in the soil. So they ended up testing, and we realized this issue was far greater than just my friend Mike. It expanded into families, into farmers, into communities. And what we've realized too, Sophia, is that it's not just obviously in the state of Maine, it's all across the country. And fortunately, more and more attention has been paid on this issue recently.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, what's your background, Jeff? How have you made short documentaries before? And what made you say, like, okay, let's make this film. Let's make this documentary.
Yeah. Great question. So I was a journalist and worked in television news for 18 years. My last stint was at NBC News in New York, and then started my own production company. And I've always had a sense of journalism, storytelling, strong storytelling in my mirrors and in my blood. And I've always wanted to tell a good story. When this came along, it just seemed like when we first found out about this, that was like 3 years ago, very few people were talking about it. Now it's talked about a little bit more, thankfully. But we hadn't heard about it. And so it just seemed like this is the right thing to do, that when we reached out to farmers, when we reached out to people that had lost everything, they had lost their farm, they had really, their health had been diminishing. It just seemed like this was a story that hadn't been told, and we needed to.
Wow. Yeah. I could see, obviously, I mean, hearing the story, I'm so happy you guys were like, let's be a part of making this a more talked about and obviously bringing awareness. But
Yeah.
also, I could see why your background was in journalism and all that. You're very passionate about this story and
Yeah. I mean,
sharing
I think
truths.
Exactly. We have an exquisite group of producers and executive producers with us, and I think some of them are really focused on environmental issues. And this is an issue, you could say, that sadly we've discovered it's been around for a long time. PFAS has been around for almost 100 years, so it's
Mhm.
been in our system, so to speak, for a long time through big chemical companies. But now, only now, we're realizing, I think, the severity and the effects behind it. And so, again, with our producers that we were able to, I think, tell a cohesive story and hopefully continue to get the message out.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk to me about the producers and like what went into
Yeah.
getting this film, making this film, right? I
We,
saw, yeah, Matthew Modine, who
yes,
we
the
all know
great
at Garza
Matthew.
Film Festival is an executive producer.
Yes, the great Matthew Modine, who I adore. Sophia, we were talking about him. He's just not only is he an incredible actor, but he's an activist with
Mhm.
the best intentions and the strongest voice that I can think of someone to speak about environmental issues. He's been an advocate for the environment and the planet his entire life, and so to be able to be a partner with him and his producing partner Adam, in addition to, we have another producer by the name of Todd Harden and Adam Leipzig, who the other Adam, has spent decades in film and television as an executive. And so to be able to have folks that were able to come on board and say, this is an important issue to us, how can we help? How can we get this thing made? Was really life changing.
Mm. What goes into, I know there's so much and we don't have all the time to talk about
Yeah.
what goes into it, but like producing it, you have to get these farmers to want to share their story. You guys followed them. You got reference, so much footage. What went into
Yeah.
producing this and directing Sludge?
I mean, I think that's the best question, right? To a filmmaker is and a storyteller is like, how where do you begin and then how do you see
Yeah.
it through? Because anybody would know, whether you're making even a short or a feature, just getting something made and getting it done, and not uh, listening to the voices in your head that sometimes go, oh, this sounds hard and complicated.
Yes.
So we started, it took about 2.5 years to make even just the short film.
Mhm.
So we were able to, again, I think the group of us realized how important this was. And when we began talking to the farmers, it really dawned on us that if we're going to tell their story, we need to tell it correctly, and we need to tell it honestly, and we need to tell it so that when they watch it, they don't go, that's not us, or
Mhm.
they got the issue wrong, because to them, this is their entire lives. I mean, this is
Yeah.
really, this issue, PFAS, has changed their horizon, their farm forever. I mean, some people have actually lost their farms as a result. And so it became a realization on our part that we have to get this right. And if we don't get it right, we've completely failed and we haven't done our jobs.
Mm. So how do you guys know whose story to tell? How do you get the word out and like know which farmers to follow their story?
Yeah, though there, back in 2016, there was a farmer by the name of Fred Stone, and Fred was he was identified as sort of what officials called as a unicorn. They said, "Oh, this happened to you. It was a one-time thing. Apparently, this fertilizer, this sludge, was spread on your farm. It's horrible, but we don't think it happened to anybody else, and it's doubtful that it continued down the road." Well, sure enough, that was not true, and I think Fred realized that, and so Fred actually went to the press, and there was I think it was a Reuters article or an AP article that he spoke to the press. They had a small press conference, and he said, "I've been severely impacted by this chemical that we knew nothing about, that shouldn't be on our land, that shouldn't be a part of our cattle." And when he began speaking out, other farmers began testing out of their own goodwill, so to speak. They said, "Boy, I should probably make sure that this is not in our land." And what happened was, when those farmers started testing voluntarily, they discovered they had very high levels of this contaminant in their food, in their cattle. And one group of farmers that we talked to, they had to toss out an entire year's worth of meat, food,
Mhm.
a dairy, and that, I mean, if you think about a farmer that has to throw out all of their product for an entire year, I mean, that, I would imagine, I grew up in Iowa, that I think that would probably
Mhm.
destroy many farms. They would say, how can we bounce back from that? Fortunately, Farmers are very resilient people.
Right.
And these are folks in the state of Maine who I think are extraordinarily resilient because of the agriculture there and because of the weather and et cetera. So we just realized that we had some, again, as I mentioned, some really important characters to bring to life.
Mm. So what are some of the things as a director that you had to bring to making Sludge? You know, time, I'm assuming when you, and like these are really vulnerable stories, like you said, it's life
Yeah.
changing. So what are some of the things you had to do as a director to tell these stories?
I think, it's interesting because some documentaries get really into the weeds of the specifics of chemicals and the science and the things that I think people could be overwhelmed by, quite
Yeah.
honestly. And I think looking at an environmental issue, it's easy to get overwhelmed by a subject like that because somebody like me who did okay in school but wasn't a scientist. What we realized was we needed to tell this story so that just my grandmother and other people could watch it and digest
Mhm.
it and understand what the realities of this is. And not only that, but always great characters, powerful moments, strong storytelling. I mean, that's what we leaned into. Was if I think if people emphasize, excuse me, if people empathize with the
Mhm.
characters and with the people that they see in the film, uh, maybe they'll realize, people will realize, and hopefully lawmakers who see the film, educators will say, we need to pay attention to this. This is something that's not going away.
Yeah. Yeah, and you definitely see that in the film, like, rather than the scientifics and what the chemical is or the breakdown, it's like just the stories and like what happened, what people had to go through,
Yeah.
and the aftermath of that. That's what's powerful, and that's what's like, oh my gosh, this is a huge issue. Let me learn more. So, speaking of kind of what you want people to feel, what are your hopes for audiences at Garden State Film Festival or anybody watching Sludge and hearing about PFAS about
Yeah,
this?
well, that's a great question again, Sophia. Especially given what's going on in the world today, our changing political landscape, I think it's so important that filmmakers, people who are able to get a camera, use their voice for an issue that is either happening in their backyard, literally, or in someone else's backyard that they have seen, that they feel that there's an injustice. And so the hope is that we're able to raise an awareness around certain issues, this particular issue, and others that hopefully will transform minds and change.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we were talking a little before, you're really excited to bring this to Garden State Film Festival. You know,
Yes.
Matthew Modine is one of the executive producers. He won an award last year, had his film be our big feature film debut
Yeah.
at the 22nd Annual Film Festival. This is the 23rd. So how's it feel to have Sludge screening at Garden State Film Festival?
I mean, we're so honored. We premiered almost a year ago, and so to be able to
Mm,
start at the beginning of last year, and then end, this is our last one that I'm
wow.
aware of, is like going out on top. And I think to be able to be a part of the Garden State Film Festival that has, as we said, has curated so many wonderful films from different storytellers, different voices, and the fact that we're able to bring again this issue to audiences. And what we've learned is a lot of people go in thinking, I know a little bit about it or I heard about it. And they walk out going, ooh, man, maybe I should
Wow.
know more. So we're
Yeah.
just thrilled.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you so much for making this, for telling this story, you know, kind of having it have more of a voice and get out there more because the more publicity, the better. Thank you, Jeff, for taking the time out. Congratulations. Do you know how quickly before we sign off too,
Yeah.
like how can people see more of this issues or anything you want to shout out?
Yep, we are. Just finishing our festival run, and we're looking to get our film streamed on one of the streaming platforms coming up in the future. So we're still talking to some, so I can't say officially yet, but it'll be out there. If you do an old Google or search, you'll be
Yes.
able to see us for Sludge. Yep.
Awesome. And you could just see it first, you know,
Yep.
here at Garden
In
State
the
Film
theater.
Festival.
Yes,
Let
exactly.
me tell you, let me tell you guys how you can see it. It will be screening on the Asbury Hotel Sunday, March 30th. The film block is 11:30 a.m. to 1:45 p.m. It's a really awesome block. I know some other films that are going to be there as well. So get your tickets at gsff.org. Jeff, I hope to see you at the Garden State Film Festival. Thanks again for taking the time out to talk to me. Congratulations.
Thank you, Sophia. It's a real honor. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Have a good one. Bye.